Hello there. Right, I've got a new little project in mind. Things that people can do if they wish to whilst they're at home isolating or social distancing at this very strange time. Um, and in light of that, I'm going to try and stop saying but also I'm going to do some little tutorials, little video tutorials, and some tutorials that will be going up on my blog to show you how to produce some pieces of free machine embroidery work. Obviously, the first thing you need to do is to know how to set your sewing machine up to enable you to do free motion work. And there are three fundamental things. The first one is to lower the tension on your machine. This will be different for every machine, even potentially for two machines of the same model. You might just need to do very tiny tweaks. I've got a manual machine, and I always know that I have to reduce the tension on that one from about 4.5 down to 3 to do free motion work. The other one is to reduce your stitch length to 0. This will kind of happen anyway because we're also going to drop the feed dog, so there'll be nothing, these little teeth under here will be dropped and there'll be nothing pulling the fabric through the machine, but it is always a good idea to reduce your stitch length to 0 anyway. If you've got a machine in which you can't drop the feed dogs, for many machines you can actually buy what's called a darning plate, which covers up the feed dogs and just has a little hole for the needle to go up and down. Excuse me, I haven't coughed for 10 days until now, when obviously nerves, because I'm videoing, have got the better of me. Or if you have to, you can also put a piece of like plastic vinyl fabric. You can tape a piece of that over the feed dogs to stop them catching on the fabric that you're going to be moving over the top. The idea is you want your fabric to move freely. You're going to be controlling the direction of the stitches by the way that you move the fabric. You can liken this to drawing on paper with a pencil, but rather than moving the pencil, and in this case your pencil is your needle, you're going to be moving the paper beneath the needle, or the paper or the fabric beneath the needle, which is going up and down. And the machine isn't sewing backwards, it's not sewing to the left, it's not sewing to the right, it's just going up and down. You're the one that is making the stitches go in whichever direction you want them to. Okay. Where were we with that? The feet that I use on my machine, I've got a Pfaff Quilt Expression 4.2, and then it has a function called Sensomatic Free Motion, which sets, with the press of one button, it sets the tension and the stitch length for me. And then I have another button to lower the feed dogs. The Sensomatic foot on my Pfaff is this tiny little thing. Costs £15. Really easy to lose, as I know, because I've had to replace 2 that I lost and then found later. On mine, you can see it's open there. You may also see feet that are like a ring. I prefer an open toe foot, perfect personal preference only. It just enables me to see my work more clearly as I'm stitching. On other machines, you may have a specific foot for your machine, or you can actually buy a universal foot to fit your make of machine and your model. Again, I've got one here with an open toe because that's what I prefer, and this is the one that I use on my manual machine. And this little bar here, that goes onto the foot bar, and then the little bit that sticks out above the spring goes above the needle clamp. Okay, but you can find directions for using these online anyway. So that's the feet. The thread that I use, mostly I use black thread because my work involves outlining appliques and drawing around appliques. And I like a black outline for most of my work. And I tend to use Orifil 40 weight in black because my machine likes it. That's the main thing, is to go with a thread that your machine is happy with. A thread that's constantly breaking or snagging is going to really annoy you. And I find that the Orifil works really nicely with my machine. It's, again, personal preference. There's not a specific needle to use, it's a universal needle, and I use a size 12 or a 100 for when I'm stitching into calico or linen or cotton, as in this case. I interface the back of my fabric with a medium or a heavyweight interfacing, an iron-on one, because of the nature of the work that I do, because most of my work will get made up into bags, and it's fine because then that's interfaced ready for the bag anyway. You can also use an embroidery hoop. It's not something I get on with greatly because I end up going too fast and too close to the edge, and it just it just annoys me. But it's personal preference. You do whatever feels better for you. The main thing is that your fabric is held flat against the bed of the machine and isn't going to get caught up and pucker as it goes through the foot, because you can end up going quite fast, and it's very wearing on your hands if you're using your hands to tension the fabric. In this case, because it's interfaced, I can just gently move it, and the tension in my hands is absolutely minimal. Now, before every single session, I have a warm-up, and that's to get my muscle memory going again, just to get into the swing of it, to check that the stitching is actually working properly on my machine and sort out any threading issues, that kind of thing. I really, really encourage people to just play. That's how you're going to get practice. You're not going to be perfect at it the first time you do it. A lot of people hate that word, practice. But like anybody who progresses in something, you do it quicker and better if you practice more. And it's okay to play. So let yourself do it. There's no rights and wrongs. If a line goes wobbly, or you go off piste a bit, it doesn't matter. It's, I use scrap fabric, I use offcuts or scraps of interfacing. It's fine. I've had 6 years practice at this, so I make it look easy. My stitching does generally look reasonably neat. But, even I don't tend to get upset if a line goes wobbly, because I'm not a machine, I'm a human being, and if it looks too perfect, it doesn't have that lovely handmade look to it anyway. So this was a little bird that I drew in my previous video that didn't work. When you're starting out, just draw whatever you feel like drawing. You don't have to be a good artist to do this by any means. You can start off drawing circles, drawing squares, drawing straight lines, drawing wavy lines, doodling. One of the best things you can do, because it takes you in every direction and curves and straight lines and everything, is to just write on your machine. It doesn't matter if your handwriting isn't neat and tidy. Most of the time, the writing that you produce on your machine won't actually resemble your handwriting greatly anyway, because you will find you write differently on the machine than you would if you were holding a pencil and writing on a piece of paper. So cut yourself some slack, relax. It's not the end of the world if something goes wonky. And just take your time and enjoy it. So what I'm going to do now is just should we do another little bird? Because they are a favourite and I do enjoy doing them. My machine's an automatic machine, so things like putting the foot down and thread cutting, it does that for me, which is lovely, unless I then go on a manual machine and can't remember how to put the foot down. So you'll notice that mine does things without me touching it, but don't let that worry you. So you start off by foot down, okay? And I tend to bring the thread round to the back. Okay, that can just stay there. And then I'm going to start stitching in place. And in a moment, I'm going to be going much faster. But for now, let's do a little slow bit. I'm going to do the body of this bird first. And I am moving, it's hard to see my movements, but I am moving the fabric to the left and round with really small movements. And then to the right, a bit further, and we'll do his beak. I'm going to start going a bit faster now. When you go slow, you'll find that your stitches end up being more noticeable. What I like to have is a fairly solid line so that the stitch length is barely discernible. But in this case, because I went slowly, you can actually see it looks more like normal stitching. And I'm going to go here, I'm going to do a little circle, tiny movements. The movement comes from my fingers. It doesn't come from moving my wrists, it doesn't come from moving my whole arm. Just tiny little movements in my fingers that you can barely see. And we're going back this way. Now, spirals are a great practice piece, especially if you go over them in the other direction again, because then you don't get comfortable just going in one direction. And I think we'll use that circle there as a spiral as well, just to introduce that into it. And then we're going to go around here, and then down for his legs. This is where I sometimes wobble, but I don't mind. Okay. And you'll notice I'm going over each line twice. So I stitch in one direction, and then I stitch back in the other direction. And that's because I like the look of that double line, if you like. Doesn't matter if the lines don't meet exactly either. It really isn't a problem. Okay, and then we're going to do a little wing over here. Okay, and that is that. My machine's got an automatic thread cutter, so I don't have to worry about that. You don't need, unlike with free motion quilting, you don't really need to bring your threads through to the back of your work, as long as they stay out of your way when you're working. So you don't need to pull them through to the back of your work to tie them off. You are, unlike with quilting where you want a nice even stitch length, here we've got very, very tiny stitches. You can hardly make out the individual stitches there. And that is very, very unlikely to unravel. Believe me, when I've made mistakes on these and I've tried to undo them with my stitch ripper, it's a real challenge, I think is a polite way of putting it. It's very, very difficult to undo these because you just haven't got any length of stitch to get a stitch ripper or anything into. But you get a very solid line, so it almost looks like it's been sketched with a fine liner pen. Okay, so that's starting you off. Get your machine manual out if you've got it. If not, go online. Nearly every machine out there has got an online PDF of its manual, and you'll be able to download that. Look at how to set it up for free motion. There may even be videos on YouTube for your machine, but the fundamentals are lower the tension to a point where your machine is sewing nicely. Okay, so you've got no loops on the bottom or the top. Stitch length 0, feed dogs down, get yourself a scrap of fabric, any old thing will do, doesn't matter, and have a play and enjoy it. And that's it. If you've got any questions at all, you can message me on Instagram, where I'm at Mrs_Moog. If I do work out how to put this on YouTube, you can also leave it in the comments below. But I've not done that yet, so we'll see how that goes. But good luck and have fun, and I will be back with another video showing an actual piece of work that basically it's a new pattern I'm bringing out that you can stitch at home whilst you're social distancing. Okay, thanks then.